Hey guys, how's it going this morning? All right, I hope that this talk will be almost as exciting as the fire earlier. So at the end, I'm going to expect feedback from you guys as to whether or not I'm able to live up to these expectations. Okay, so I am Jack Menzel. I'm this guy. I'm a product management director, and I work at Google. And I'm here to talk to you guys about the future of search. And we're going to start off talking really kind of generally. And the way that I even like to start talking about this is, when a lot of people come talk to me about search, I say, I've been working at search, I've been working on Google, I've been working on the search engine for about 6 years now, and they're like, well, that's cool, that's probably interesting, I hear the food's really good, but what is it that you do all day? And I'm like, well, search is really hard. It's evolving, and like the internet is changing, and like there are so many amazing kind of user needs that we're trying to satisfy. And they're like, I don't get it. Like when I type stuff into Google, it works. And like, isn't search a totally solved problem? And then I'm like, no. There's all kinds of stuff that people type into the search engine that just doesn't quite work today. And then they're like, well, you've been there for a long time. Tell me something that you've done that you're really proud of. And so I say, well, do you remember back in the day when you used to type in a query like pictures of puppies and you wouldn't see any pictures? And they're like, no, that sounds broken. And I'm like, oh, God, that was hard. We worked for a really long time on that one. Or you say, do you remember when you went to a search engine and you typed in cafes, and it didn't show you the closest cafes to where you were sitting right then? And they're like, no, I don't remember that at all. That just sounds broken. And I just keep going. I keep going like this with feature after feature, and people are just like, well, they expect so much, and the user expectation for Google is so high that it proves very difficult to demo things to people, and even like changes where we're like really proud of them. And those changes that I was talking about before, like being able to show you pictures of puppies when you do something as crazy as ask for pictures, like those you can actually see. Like I would expect you guys to see that. Some of the other like even more difficult changes are things that you guys will never even see. And if you think about like what it takes to even build the guts of a search engine, like it is crazy hard. Like we worked for a really long time on a change that would show you, when you type in taxes, it would show you taxes in the right country. And so you'd say, if you were in England, it would show you information from the Royal Tax Society, and if you were in the US, it'd show stuff from the IRS. And we're like, yes, we did it. And we showed it to everybody, and they're like, of course it does. Of course that works. You're just like, oh, again, just can't win with you guys. So though I'm really delighted that people have such a high expectation of search, it's really hard to impress people. And then if you think about even more of these kind of underpinnings of like what it takes to build a good search engine, even something as fundamental, as basic as crawling the web, people are just like, yeah, you search the web, right? Like I type in a query, and then within less than a second, you come back with the best results from the entire web. And I'm like, yeah, but how does that work? I'm like, well, I don't know. And in reality, we have to crawl the entire web, which is trillions and trillions and trillions of pages. And at this point, the expectation around how fast we crawl the internet is almost real time, which is nuts if you think about it, right? Like, you guys got any idea how much data that is? Like the idea that we could like search the web in real time is just crazy. But we've managed to get our incremental systems to such an extent that you guys are just like, yeah, of course, I posted a blog and it'll be on Google in like, I don't know, like, let's take a sip of coffee here. Hold on. Oh, there it is. It's there. Oh, cool. And if you don't see it, it's broken, which is just crazy if you think about it. So that's where we are today. But what are we doing in the future? What is the perfect search engine? How can we make it even better? So the first thing that you guys will expect out of the search engine of the future is that you want it everywhere, right? You guys are hiking up Everest, right? And you pull out your phone and you're like, I really need to know like how'd the World Series go yesterday? You guys have the expectation you're just gonna be able to pull out your phone. You know, you got your gloves on, so it's like a pain in the ass. You don't wanna like type or stuff. You're just gonna pull it out. You're gonna be like, Google, did the Giants win the World Series? And Google's gonna be like, yeah, they did. And you're gonna be like, right on. But you know, that's crazy. But we really believe that the search of the future is going to be everywhere and is going to be as accessible, like anywhere you want it, and as accessible as, if anywhere where you have an information need, and if it's climbing Everest and you want to know about the World Series, we want to be able to answer. We want to be able to help you with that. If you're in the kitchen and you want to find the best apple strudel recipe, we're going to help you with that. And it doesn't matter where you are. You don't need a desktop. You got any device. We want to make search available there. Now, the next thing about the search of the future is search should really be conversational. If you think about search as if you imagine search was your assistant, you'd be really annoyed with it most of the time, because the way the conversation would go something like this. You'd be like, "Hey, search, I want to know about cypress trees," and then be like, "Here's some information about cypress trees." And you'd be like, "Oh, that's cool. How tall do they typically grow?" And it'd be like, "What? What are you talking about? Like, how tall does what grow?" You'd be like, "Trees," and it would forget every single time. It'd forget who you are and where you are and what you're talking about every time, and that'd be tremendously obnoxious. So in the future, you'd expect to just be able to be like, "Oh yeah, how much water do they take? And do they grow in what different varieties are there? I hear some of them are shrubs. Can you tell me more about the types of cypress trees that are shrubs?" And you expect to be able to have this type of conversational interaction and be able to interact with the data that comes back with it in the same way that if you were going to ask me a question, you'd be like, "Hey Jack, tell me about cypress trees." I'd be like, "Sure, here's generally about cypress trees." And then you'd be able to be like, "Oh yeah, I've got some refinements for you. Here, tell me about just these types of cypress trees." And also, you'd also be able to express yourself. You wouldn't feel like you have to inhibit yourself when you're expressing yourself to a search engine, right? You don't want to imagine that you came up to me and you asked me some questions about search, and you were like, "Jack, search." And I'd be like, "Whoa, what are we talking about? That's so weird. Why are you barking commands at me? What do you want to know about search?" You should be able to express yourself in a very natural way, as if you're talking to a knowledgeable person. And you should be able to actually give your real information need. So you should be as specific as you want to be. So that's actually only half of the problem of the search of the future, which is kind of just, you want to be able to interface with it in natural ways, and you want it to understand you. But really, in order to answer your questions, a search engine has to know about the entire world. People come to Google and they have all kinds of crazy information needs, right? There's the people who want to know the score of the Giants game, and there's the people who want to know, the recipes. There's people who want to know, what is the latest scientific research on this very specific topic. And we need to be able to have indexed enough of the world's information to be able to help people research and answer all of those questions. And so we need to know about everything. It should also be able to get you the right answer. So knowing about everything, being able to understand you, and knowing about all the information in the world doesn't even get you the right thing. It's actually really easy to give you answers. I have systems which I could turn on for you guys, which would answer any question you could possibly ever ask, just like that, right? In a couple of words, it'd just be like, "Here's the answer." And you guys would go crazy because it would be wrong most of the time. Giving an answer is easy. Giving the right answer turns out to be really, 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 really hard. And it turns out to be really hard even in kind of fun ways that you guys might not even think would be really hard. Let's say that you guys were like, "Okay, Google, tell me about the tallest building in Seattle." Now, I could give you an answer, but you end up in these crazy kind of nuances of language, well, when you say tallest building, do you mean the tallest building as defined as a human-built structure where tallest is the highest inhabitable floor? Or did you mean the tallest building where you include the spire? And do you count antennas, or do you only count fixed architectural spires? And you're like, "Oh my God, whoa, I didn't know that there was so much nuance to this." But as part of giving you the right answer, we not only have to just be able to respond to you, you also have to be able to answer the question and explain how that answer is actually correct. And that, you guys can imagine, is very, very hard. And now, so one of the things when we talk about the search of the future should be able to answer all your questions. And you'd be like, "Whoa, that sounds crazy. Won't that completely obviate the web? Isn't this a terrifying kind of race condition that you are creating for the entire internet, where Google will learn about the entire world and then be able to answer all of your questions, and then you will not need the thing that Google uses in order to answer all of your questions?" Well, it is a scary dystopian kind of thing. However, I assure you guys, that will not be the case. Because if you actually look at how people use search engines and the kinds of decisions that you guys usually go to the internet to make in your lives, you'll find as much as it may make this conversation easier, you guys are not playing Trivial Pursuit all that often. Like, occasionally, you'll come to a search engine, you'll be like, what's the phone number of that Thai restaurant down the street? And it'll go like, bam, here's the phone number, call them up. You'd be like, all right on. And sometimes you'll be at the bar with your friends, and you'll be like, oh, I think the Eiffel Tower was built in this year, and then I bet you the next 2 rounds of drinks that it wasn't built in this year, and you answer that question, and then bam, you walk away, and you're completely done. But if you look at the kinds of tasks that people really do with the search engine, they are things that often will take, months for them to complete, right? It's like, what kind of, like my car is getting really old. What kind of car should I buy? Or, I'm really interested in, learning about cypress trees or any type of like things that you just won't get an answer and then just be like, what kind of dog should I get? You should get a Great Dane. And then you'd be like, oh, okay, I guess I'll go get a Great Dane. No, you're going to do a lot of research. You're going to go dig deep into the internet. And the way we think about Google search and the way we think about the search of the future is that Google will help you guys as a map, more like a map of the web, where you guys will say, tell me about what dog I should get, and then it will say, hey, let me explain to you, here are the different types of dogs and the types of pages you should read in order to learn whether or not this dog or this dog or this dog is the appropriate type of breed of dog for your house. It is not the case, I can assure you guys, that Google will just answer all your questions and then you'll just be like, yeah, I don't need that internet thing anymore. It's obnoxious. I'm glad we could optimize that out of my life. It will help you make better decisions, though. It will help you figure out what the right dog is or what car you should buy or what the latest is on the type of research that you're doing. Next point about the search of the future. It should be truly universal. And much like back when I was telling you guys that some people who I talk to can't even imagine a day when you like had to do something as crazy and efficient as if you wanted to see pictures of puppies, you had to go to image search and you had to think about it, type pictures of puppies, and then if you wanted to look at those, you'd be like, oh, what puppy is that? Let me go research that puppy first. You had to go back to the web, and then what a pain. Search should be truly universal and shouldn't make you think about like, oh, I have access to the following bits of information and they're all kind of on the web and I need to go do this search and then cross-reference it with this search and then cross-reference it with this search. We should just be able to get for all the information that you would expect to have access to on the web, you should be able to do that. You should be able to issue a query that then just gets you to just the right information for you. Like, take, for example, the query, let's see. So I need to get back down to the Bay Area this afternoon, and so I want to know, what time should I leave here? Like, shouldn't Google be able to answer what time should I leave here? Because if I think about it, I can search my Gmail for the flight number. Then I can search Google for the status of the flight, see if it's delayed, and I can check to make sure I'm going out of SeaTac. Then I can search for directions to make sure that I can get to the airport properly, and then I can look at the traffic. And whoa, that's a pain in the ass. Like all of those searches, if with just a little bit of fanciness, we could just tie those things together for you, and we could be able to answer the question. I mean, imagine, I hope that when I come back to you guys, in a year or two, when I get up on the stage and I do this silly spiel about how people have really high expectations of search, I'm going to be like, do you remember a time when you couldn't ask Google the question, where am I going to dinner with my wife this evening, and what time should I leave? And you guys are going to be like, no, that sounds like Google would be broken. Of course it's going to say, you have a reservation at this restaurant, and because of traffic, you should probably leave at 7:45. And you guys are just going to be like, that is so obvious. So I hope that is the case, but we do strive to make Google really universal and be able to tie all the pieces of information together that you'd expect to get out of the web into one quick way for us to get you to just the information you need. So, to summarize, the perfect search engine should understand exactly what you mean and give you back exactly what you want. That's easy, right? Okay, we're done here, and I'll just go back and I'll just code this up for you, right? I got you guys covered. Now that sounds kind of like science fiction, right? That's kind of like saying, well, yeah, no, don't worry about it. I'll just go back in the back room and I'll just solve artificial intelligence. And while I'm at it, why don't I make you guys a jetpack too? Because that would be awesome. Don't you guys want jetpacks? I hear traffic here is just as bad as in the Bay Area. But though this all kind of sounds like science fiction, it's kind of crazy, and we're all kind of mad scientists for working on it, we at Google subscribe to the Sigourney Weaver philosophy of science fiction, which is that we don't really see science fiction as fiction. And we're not really working on colonies on Mars, but some of those things that I mentioned before at the moment are sufficiently crazy that I would compare it to colonies on Mars. But we are working on these things. And now I'm going to show you guys a few steps that we've taken recently in that direction so that you can see that though we are shooting for Mars, it's going to take us a little while to get to Mars. Like, Mars is far away. But let me show you guys how we're going to get to Mars, one step at a time. So the first part I was talking about the future of search is really being able to understand you and having you be able to express yourself really, really naturally. At the moment, or up until this point, Google has done a very good job of doing things that you guys probably don't even notice. Like, you can refer, like, if you're searching for your friend Bob, you can call him Robert or Bob, and we're like, no, don't worry, we got it. Or, you can put their middle name or not put their middle name in. We're like, you got it. You can spell things like totally out of whack, just like, close your hands and just close your eyes and just, pound on the keyboard. And we're like, yeah, we got it. Did you mean this? And we'll help you out with all these things. But in the end, up until this point, search has really just been about fancy word counting and string matching. And though we've done a great job of getting you closer and closer to sort of the utopia of having it actually understand syntax and understand really what you're talking about, a lot of it is still just we count frequencies, we figure out what it is most likely that these strings of characters that you typed in really should mean, and then we give you that. And that's gotten us really far today, and I'm sure you guys probably like search okay, but imagine you run into these weird cases like kings, where you're like, all right, as far as strings go, kings, like, we got the answer. Like, we nailed it right there. Look, we got all the possible best documents all over the web about the kings. But if you ask me as a person about kings, I'd be like, what? What are we talking about? Are we talking, like, I know that there's a hockey team, I know that there's a basketball team, and I know that there's a popular TV show. Whoa, which one of these things are we talking about? And I wouldn't just start railing off random answers to you guys. In order for us to do this, we have to understand that this word is truly ambiguous and refers to lots of things. And then in order to be able to give us the ability to ask you follow-up questions, or segment the page properly, or label things, or even just return the right diverse set of results. And so that's why we started work a couple years ago on the Google Knowledge Graph, which is our underlying representation of the world, which is this crazy ambitious thing where we strive to model everything, like everything about the world. We go and we think of it as like our scaffolding of how we're going to understand the world. And if you think about it, like, if you look back at that Kings example, it really helps to know that, hey, the Sacramento Kings are a NBA team, and that they have a roster and they have a schedule, or the hockey team has scores, or they are in season and here's their latest pages, or the TV show actually. The important things about the TV show are what are the latest episodes, and when did they air, and where can you watch them online. And so if by modeling the entire world, by modeling everything in the world, we're able to do a better job of then creating this kind of map, this quick way for you to access just the information that you want whenever you do whatever query you want. And as of today, the Knowledge Graph has over 500 million people, places, or things, and 3.5 billion connections between them. And that sounds a little weird, and we get a little graphy there, where what we mean by this is that, for example, the Kings, the NBA team, would be one node, and then you would have lots and lots of connections to be like, oh, here are all the players of the Kings. Oh, and here are all the games that they played. And often it is not just enough to know that the Kings are a thing or a set of things, but also that these are the important things that connect them, so that then you can really help people do the kind of in-depth research that they want to do. So a simple feature that we launched that's based on this kind of understanding of the world is the way that you can now refine on the right-hand side here. So you see that we're like a human, like you might expect me to do if you asked me this question. If you came up to me and you just barked at me, Kings, tell me everything you know. I then would say, oh, here's some information, but like you probably want to be more specific than that. And then from that, you can drill down into exactly the interpretation you mean. You're like, no, dude. I'm not a hockey fan at all. I'm totally a TV buff. I want to know about the Kings, the TV show. And then we give you just the results about the TV show. Then that's one example of the kinds of things we do. The next example I think is really fun because it also goes, it highlights another reason that I think that we at Google actually are, I don't know if you guys might find this a little bit crazy, but we spend huge amounts of time trying to shave milliseconds off of your searches. Like one of my first projects in search, we were trying to. I think we spent a good about 6 months working to save. I think it was like 50 to 100 milliseconds, depending on the timing, off of every search that you do. And you guys would be like, dude, I can't even perceive 100 milliseconds. But in aggregate, if you add that up to billions of searches a day, and for all the searches that you guys will ever do over your lifetime, like that is a lot of time. And we take speed tremendously seriously. And so this feature is a great example of how we want to get you the results exactly the results you want as fast as we possibly can. So when you type Rio, you may be like, oh, I totally want the movie. No, clearly, no ambiguity in my mind, but then right there in suggest, it's like, no, whoa, hey, you are going to get results about the film primarily, and so you better select this next suggestion, and it will save you seconds off of your searches, which in the grand scheme of things is very significant. The next thing that we're able to do with a great understanding of the world that brings us closer to the Mars of the future is we're able to look out over the entire web and summarize the content that comes back into its most salient form, and then give you summaries of the topics that you're searching for. So whenever you search for a topic now and the knowledge graph has a summary of it, we will return on the right the most salient things. So for Frank Lloyd Wright, my use case might be like, what was that? There's like his most famous project. It was called, I can't remember, Falling Water, Taliesin. Oh, Falling Water, that's it. And then I can go and I can dive into it. I can explore. I can go ahead and reserve tickets there. I can see how long the drive is to get there, because it's kind of not very close to anything. The other fun thing that it allows us to do is, since we have this huge graph with all of these connections, and we have the web that we're searching over, we're able to not just summarize, just like, oh yeah, sure, for every person we just show you when they're born, and that's it, that's cool, that's totally what everyone's looking for. That's not what everyone's looking for. We're able to create these dynamic summaries of whatever it is you're searching for. So if you were searching for a hip-hop artist, you probably are more interested in their songs and events. But if you search for an astronaut, you're like, oh yeah, obviously she's not going to have any upcoming events, but totally what space missions she was on, and how much flight time she's had. Like, these are going to be the salient points for an astronaut. But we're able to do a good job of summarizing an incredibly diverse amount of information. So it also allows you to not just see like, oh yeah, now I remember I was looking up what space flight she was on, but most of the time when people do these queries, like what I was talking about before, they have a deeper research need. They have an information need that is greater than just like, I'm going to prove you wrong in this bar bet. And so what we've done is we've also highlighted the connections between things. And so we know that a lot of people who are searching for Cedar Point, they want to know about the roller coasters. I mean, that's the reason that you want to search for Cedar Point. And a lot of the times we would see how people would use search. They would search for Cedar Point, and then they search for one ride, and then they search for another ride, and they watch a YouTube video, and then they search for another ride, and then they watch another YouTube video, and then they read the Wikipedia page on the tallest steel roller coaster in the US. And what we've done with the knowledge graph is we've made that process much easier for you so that you can very quickly flip between the different topics that you're interested in, because it's very unlikely that you're just like, you have a deep kind of information. You're like, I want to know whether or not Cedar Point is an awesome amusement park and I should take my family there. You're not just going to do the query and be like, oh, good, Cedar Point, done, walking away, all right. You're going to actually do some research. You're going to dig into the different facets of it, and you're going to want to better understand. And the knowledge graph helps us make that faster. But it doesn't just stop at topics, because the other thing that you guys often are searching for is, in that vein of making decisions, you have to decide between things. And so we don't just want to say, oh yeah, we got all the topics covered. Really, we want you to be able to query for collections of things as well. Like, let's say that you guys were like, well, hey, the building's on fire. We better go do something in Seattle while we're waiting for them to let us back into this awesome conference. You can do a query like things to do in Seattle, which obviously there's not an answer, right? There's not even a single set of pages. Like, you're going to have to explore various topics in order to know what you want to do in Seattle. Or if you're interested in the moons of Jupiter, like there are many moons of Jupiter, and for you to really understand the moons of Jupiter, you should be able to explore that set. You should be able to look at each of those topics, and Google should make that longer research task really easy for you. And that's what we've done with the knowledge carousel that we show on some of these queries now at the top of search. Back to the connections between things. So it's not just that you go from things to do in Seattle to the thing to what those actual attractions are, but we're trying to get even more nuance. And this turns out to be really, really, really hard. And we've just started doing this, but if you're searching for movies, you can see kind of this like proof of concept of how we can make use of those connections in the knowledge graph to not only get you the information, but also try to help you understand why that's the next query that you want to do. So that then you can say, you started with one query and now you're going to figure out, oh yeah, that's because this person directed this or co-starred in this, or this person was this person's son. Being able to explain the reason that you're going to do the next query, that you really are going to do, turns out to be a great optimization in making people save time in their research tasks. You can also look up people's Kevin Bacon number, which saves you a lot of time for all the searches where you were really like, I really need to know that person's Kevin Bacon number. Yes. So another challenge about this, and what makes this such a fascinating and difficult problem, is that we have to do it. We don't just say the world as defined as here in Seattle and in the United States and for people who speak English. No, Google wants to be able to help you find all the information throughout the world, and you may not speak English, and you may be in New Zealand, or the interpretations of queries vary dramatically between different locations. Like you guys might have you guys might be like, Chiefs, yeah, I know Chiefs. I mean, unless you're in New Zealand, and then it means something completely different. But we aspire to have the knowledge graph work and be locally relevant to you all over the world, which turns out to be a huge challenge. And as you can imagine, we've got it working fairly well in English, but wow, other languages are really, really, really hard. As you can imagine, understanding the world is hard enough in one language, but we will get there. In order to get to Mars, we must speak all of the languages. So the next point is that we also want you to be able to not have to think about what search box you should have to type things into. And this goes back to the kind of like, I should really be able to query for my flight information and then be able to find the traffic, or I should be able to figure out what reservation, where did my wife make that reservation for us? Or like, is that product gonna ship? Like, I need to get that birthday present for my brother. Is that product that I got from Amazon gonna show up at my house at some time in the near future? Like, do I have to go and search? Like, no, like we'll save you all that time to remember what it was you ordered and then help you be able to look things up by, what we're prototyping is this field trial that we have where we will allow you to explicitly search your Gmail via the search results page. And it facilitates these kind of really fun interactions, like the flight case, though slightly farther from the utopian case where it shows me the traffic and exactly when I should leave and gives me an alert on my phone when I should leave. It will get you that first step. We are taking that first step towards really being able to join information elegantly across all the systems that you might be expected to search in one of your kind of research tasks. And finally, one of the points in the crazy future of search that is becoming a reality faster than any of the other ones is just the omnipresence of search. Like, the fact that you can search Google while climbing Mount Everest now is crazy, but like, it's true. I mean, I'm sure all of you guys have at least one of these things in your pocket, and we're trying to make it like, the way that we've been evolving this is we're trying to make it really natural for you to be able to talk to your device, or even just query your device in a natural way, so that, if you're like, I don't want to type, I've got my gloves on, like you can say, show me images of Tom Cruise, and we'll just be like, got it, there you go. Or, you'll be able to do things in a natural language way where, show me the money obviously doesn't mean show me pictures of money, it refers to a specific video, and then we can actually give you that video. But trying to make search more natural and more conversational, and everywhere that you are is coming along at a pace that is kind of science fiction today. So that's sort of how we're taking steps towards some of that crazy future. And if you stop and now tie these kind of things back to what we really want to do with search, you can now imagine these kind of queries that are just nuts today, right? Like you type these things, these will not work. Like, where can I attend a Lady Gaga concert with warm outdoor weather? I mean, all of that information exists on the web. You could figure that out, but that's going to take you a while to do. Or where can I find an amusement park with the most number of vegetarian restaurants nearby? Sure, you can do it today, but wow, that's going to take you a little while. Or fun tasks like how many governors were born in a different state than they govern, or what is the coldest lake in the world in July? Whoa, and that one's going to get into all kinds of crazy things like how do you define lake? Are reservoirs lakes? And all kinds of stuff that will be really fun. But these are the kinds of questions that with a better understanding of the world, a better understanding, a more natural way for you to interface with Google, I think you guys next year, the year after, you guys are just going to be like, oh yeah, take that for granted. That's easy. Like, what's up, Google? What are you going to do for me today? And I will be delighted to live in that future. So that is a lightning round tour of how we think of the future of search. And I think we have a little bit of time for questions if you guys want to ask anything. Or I can stay. Oh, there you go. Sorry, it's hard to see you. Sure. So that's a good question. And another thing that is a little like we have things set up a little bit bizarre in Google. And so though I am at the heart of the search engine, we have this crazy Chinese kind of firewall. I don't know if that's really even meaningful, between search and ads, where I spend literally almost no time thinking about monetization at all. And we try to optimize only how to make people be able to find things. And we have a completely different set of people who optimize monetizing it. And so with that strong disclaimer, I think that there will be a lot of monetization opportunities with the better understanding, better getting, like the idea that you can get people better targeted information for their information need. I'm sure that there will be fabulous ways that we'll be able to monetize that. I don't put any of that in here because we have this crazy internal structure that keeps us from chatting all that often.
Does that mean also you don't coordinate with the spam team?
No, we coordinate with the spam team. The spam team is on our search quality side of the house. The monetization side of things, like we do not. We will do things in order to make everyone's ability to find information. We will optimize that above any form of monetization that we would do, which seems kind of crazy, but it is absolutely the truth. Anybody else?
I have a question here. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
One thing that I'm thinking about is as you're getting better at doing queries with natural languages, and people still are thinking in keywords. So are you seeing people picking up on it quickly, or is there a big lag?
So that's a good question. So what we find is that it takes time for people to learn that the search engine is doing something more for them, or to learn that they can express themselves more naturally. And so we are seeing trends where people will start to ask more questions. And a good example, or be more specific in what they need. And a good example of this is in location searches. Back when it didn't work at all for you to search for locations on Google, right? You couldn't even, businesses would not show you maps, and categorical queries would just not work, and it wouldn't show you information that was close to you. You saw a much smaller percentage than you do today of people who are explicitly looking for that information or entering, queries at that depth. Slowly, as we've made those features better and better, we've seen a increase in the relative percentage of people who are expressing themselves. But it is very rare that we'll ever launch something and we'll be like, hey, did you know that you can find any holiday you want by just searching when is and then the name of the holiday? You slowly see those queries increase. Very rarely do you ever see something where it's like, oh yeah, you got it, and then the cliff of people suddenly searching for it. So it is a slow trend, but you can watch the trend happen. Yes?
Can you speak to the influence of social and location search history in terms of filtering what people...
Sure. So the overarching, the way we think about this is we want to make it so that it gives you the best answers understanding sort of the context of who you are, so that, if I am a huge Giants fan and Giants to me means the San Francisco Giants and the World Series is going on, I should not type in Giants and be like, hey, here's how the New York Giants are doing. Like that's crazy. So we want to be able to have search understand sort of basically how to give you the best answer possible for you. And like same thing with like language. You expect Google to respond with mainly pages in the language that you speak. You also expect Google to, if you ask for, I need the bus schedule because I'm going to take a bus to somewhere, you expect for it to return you buses nearby and not, like, hey, did you know that the most popular buses in the world are in London? Yeah, that's interesting, but not particularly helpful to me right now. So being able to give you the right answer is something that we try really, that is the number one criteria that we evaluate all our changes on, is whether or not you're able to accomplish your task faster. Both kind of a personalization, from a personalization and a social angle, both of those things tend to be, tend to be important, and but often are, these kind of people often think that we're doing crazier things than we really are, right? Like when I talk about like the filter bubble kind of idea, like the filter bubble of like the idea that we somehow are like optimizing your search experience such that we are only trying to please you and show you political views. So one, we don't have a system that shows you, that will skew the political view to exactly what you want. That isn't the idea. And two, when we look at how people use search engines, we're not trying to optimize it. It's naive to assume that you're just optimizing it just for clicks, right? Just to say we are a blind robot to say whatever you click on, whatever, that's what makes you happy, and that's what we're going to give you more of. We try to give you a collection of results that are a really good answer for you for that query. So personalization, I think, is the kind of the kinds of great examples of personalization are we show you the bus schedule in the right location. We give you the cafes near you. We give you the results back in the language that you would expect it. We give you the right interpretation of the word giants for you because we understand that you like football more than you like baseball. Those are the kinds of things that we that are really kind of great examples of current personalization. And though it's interesting to talk about sort of what kind of dystopian futures we could go towards if we took personalization to kind of a crazy level, we're very cognizant of not building a system that does terrible things. We believe that if we built a system that people didn't like and did terrible things, people would just they'd click over to another search engine. It's not hard to do. And so we take these things very seriously. We also, on top of that, take user preference and user control and transparency very seriously. So that's the kind of long, rambling answer to they are important and continuously evolving.
So first of all, thanks for fixing the movie times search thing. My God, I mean, how long have we been frustrated by that? How do you decide what the priorities are for fixing things? I mean, I long ago stopped searching Google for movie times because it was just so frustrating to find. And did you just say, gosh, I'm so tired of trying to find movies myself, that you decided to make that a priority? Or do you dig through all of the queries that people make and decide what the biggest problems are?
Sure. So in aggregate, we try to save people the most time and get people, improve the search engine so that it affects the most people, in the most dramatic way, right? So that it's a bit of it is not just that I woke up one day and was like, what really sucks? I want to go to the movies and I wish I could just type it into Google. We are more there's a little bit of that, but we are more principled than that in that we do a lot of research, both in user testing as well as looking at how people are using the search engine today, and then we analyze, how big of an improvement would it be? How much do we optimize that it would save people in time? Because you can do things that will affect large numbers of queries, but in very, 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 very small amounts, or small numbers of queries in very dramatic ways. And you just have to balance, how much time you think you're going to save the world, or how much better you're going to be able to make search. Yes.
Can you speak a little bit to some of the tech that you guys are using and that you would come up with to solve this giant knowledge graph problem?
Sure. Yeah. So it turns out like there's a reason that this hasn't really been, that this isn't a solved problem, in that it's really, really hard on almost all levels. And if you think about even just the first level, like you have to figure out what you're going to model and how you're going to model it. And so even just coming up with the ontologies that are reasonable for the world, and this then becomes like we could spend the rest of, I don't know, our lives arguing about how to optimize ontologies and whether or not one is better than the other, or the various merits of any given approach. But we try to be very pragmatic. We try to make it so that the ontology is high enough level that it's useful for everyone, but low enough level that we can actually make meaningful changes to Google search based on it. Then we have to go and collect. We have to kind of collect all the information that would fill up these, it's not enough just to model, just to have the schema for everything. You actually need to know that, Frank Gehry is an architect and he has the following projects and here they are, and then here's the information about each of those. So we have to go and we have to take from all available sources to us, we try to aggregate all of this information. Then, that's not good enough either, because then that's just an isolated database, and like a database that you can't find anything in is cute, but not actually useful to you. Then we take it and we actually have to we use it during web search to connect it to what people are talking about on the web, because like I was saying before, you rarely are looking for just trivia, right? Like falling water, like Frank Gehry's most famous product, falling water. Done. No, you're going to do more research than that. And so connecting it to all of the wonderful content on the web is the next part. And as you can imagine, like each one of these is hard. Like, how do you actually deal with searching a graph of 500 million things with a graph of 500 million nodes with 3.4 billion edges? Like, that is slow. And how do you make it come back in less than a second? And how do you know that a page, this page on the web is talking about falling water, and therefore I should have a summary here to make it easier for people to tell that's the page you want. You should click on this one so that you can get your reservation and you can go see Frank Lloyd Wright's project. So yeah, that's kind of a very high level, like each step of that, that's generally the process that we use, and it's very challenging at every step of the process. Yes.
With the euphoric future that you've just described, how do you think Google is going to be able to create this demarcation between commercial interests and human interests? Where do you think the machine is going to be able to create that?
Well, so we don't necessarily divide the world. Like, we don't necessarily make that division initially. We say that, like, anytime you have an information need, we're going to try to help you get to the information that's going to solve your problem. And some of the times it's going to be like, I need to buy a router now. My router is broken. Like, find me the cheapest place to buy a router. And we want to be able to answer that query. But we also want to, that we don't really see that query all that, from a overarching kind of the way we try to optimize your search experience. We don't see that query all that different than, if you're like, your query is, I don't know, what season is it best to visit Tibet in? Those two things, and maybe even that one's a little bit commercial, but we don't necessarily divide the line, and so yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not worried about the machine not doing a good job of it. Yes.
How do you see the knowledge graph playing out with sites like Wikipedia and online encyclopedias? I feel like they're kind of in decline in general.
Sure. So the way that we think of the knowledge graph playing with all of the sources on the web is we see it as, I wouldn't say that it, at least from my perspective as a search engine, I wouldn't say that Wikipedia is on the decline. If anything, I'd say that they are like the most tremendous, wonderful wealth of information created on the internet by people. Like, that is fabulous. The way that we play with these kind of sites is they are great assets to be able to send people to. When we figure out, here's the summary of the content. You want to read more? Oh, you should check out Wikipedia. Or you're doing information on dogs. You should check out the National Kennel Society. Like, awesome, they've got some great information. And so we still see Google as kind of like the map of how you're going to be able to get just to that information that you need, and then be able to go and dive deeper and be able to really answer your kind of research tasks. Wikipedia specifically has actually really, like, we talk to them fairly frequently and has been, very, very excited about the knowledge graph because it is like they're kind of special in that their whole kind of purpose is to disseminate human knowledge and to it is free and, they have no problem in having people build things on top of their systems. So we see it as a very symbiotic relationship. Like we're going to be able to, like the better we can make the better we can make sort of this map of the web, and the more efficient we can make people searching, the more time people can spend, deep in these parts of the internet that are actually answering their question, and that's good for both users, the search engine, and everyone who's publishing great content on the web. Yes.
With all the changes that you're going to be doing, which is great, do you have any guidelines for content, owners, people who run websites to improve the way that they're going to be in front of the consumers who are doing these searches in your knowledge graph?
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it's a good question, and I think it gets to the whole what is going to be I talked a little bit about this kind of symbiotic relationship between people who are publishers of good content and how we're going to be able to point people more specifically to that content. Now, I think this question gets to what are the specifics of that symbiotic relationship, and how are we really gonna make it so that because there are things where people there are clear owners for certain pieces of data, and there are how are we going to make sure that this really is a the web is a wonderful, huge community. How do we make sure that everyone is contributing and everyone can have their good information be found? So the answer to that is, I wish I had just here are the 10 steps that you should follow in order to have all of your information be perfectly understood by the entire web. This is a process that is really evolving, and to be honest, I'm not sure where we're going to end up on this, but we do take that use case of how are we going to create a community of from the web, and how are individual websites going to participate very seriously, and we're working on it. So stay tuned. I think this will be a very interesting area that will evolve very quickly. Anybody else, or do I get to stop staring into these lights? All right. Adjourned. Thank you, everyone.